Revealed, the incredible words that transformed a joke blind date into an inspiring love story. Emily stared at the gleaming surface of the diner table, her uneaten pancakes cold and untouched. The bustling atmosphere around her, the laughter of friends, the clinking of silverware felt like a distant world. She pulled at the hem of her cardigan, resisting the urge to escape to the comforting order of her elementary school classroom. Maybe this was just another disastrous blind date orchestrated by her family, one more instance in a long line of awkward setups that only deepened her frustration and self-doubt. "Is this your first time here?" Ryan asked, breaking the suffocating silence. His voice was steady, but Emily could feel the muscles in her jaw clench as she searched for a response. Should she lay it all out on the table, the pressure from her family, her fears of dating someone without a college degree? Or should she play it safe, returning to the mundane surface of everyday conversation? Behind the question lingered a moral dilemma. Could she, a teacher who passionately molded young minds, step out of her carefully constructed life to embrace the uncertainties of a relationship with a blue-collar worker? As he tentatively recounted how he'd been drawn to woodworking after crafting a toy for his little sister, her mind spiraled. Thoughts raced. He might not have a degree, but here was a man who dreamed of creating a woodworking program for kids. Wasn't he that admirable? Yet could she carve out a path for him in her structured world? With each revelation, she battled an increasing tide of tension. When he shared stories about his grandmother's tenacity, Emily felt herself mesmerizingly drawn to the vulnerability in his words. She longed to breathe life into her own passions, yet felt bound to the expectations of a family who valued degrees over dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As their conversation took unexpected turns, a gnawing fear bubbled inside her. What would her parents think? How could she reconcile their expectations with what she felt growing between them? She admired Ryan's authenticity but questioned her own choices fiercely. After all, someone like him would never fit the mold her family held so dear. The doubt loomed, heavy in the air, as she thought about her family gathering that weekend. Faced with a barrage of judgments about whether a carpenter could ever provide for her, the idea made her stomach drop. Suddenly, she could hear snippets of conversations in her mind, her mother's voice dripping with disdain. And then, as if he could sense her turmoil, Ryan locked eyes with her, vulnerability etched on his face. She felt tension scripts begin to unravel. An impending confrontation loomed, one that she had avoided for far too long. The question became more pressing: could she stand up for Ryan and the nascent connection they shared, or would she retreat into the suffocating comfort of her family's opinions? A storm awaited, and with it, the stakes surged as weighty silence folded in. This diagnosis hung heavy in the air, a defining moment that could shatter her world or redefine it, teetering on the edge of transformation. Emily's heart raced as she stared back at Ryan, his earnest gaze piercing through the web of her conflicting feelings. The cacophony of the diner faded into the background, replaced by the sharp clarity of an internal reckoning. This moment was pivotal. She could either cling to the safe, familiar life her parents carved out for her or leap into the uncharted territory of her own making. She had a choice to make. "Why don't you tell me about your dreams?" She found herself asking, the question tumbling out before her mind could second-guess her intentions. Instantly, she felt a thrill, a small but exhilarating break from her nerves. It was a way to shift the spotlight off her internal whirlwind and redirect it toward Ryan. His response would reveal not just his ambitions but something deeper about him. Ryan's eyes brightened, a spark igniting in the space between them. "I've thought a lot about starting that woodworking program for kids. I want them to experience the same joy I felt when I crafted that toy," he said, his passion palpable. Each word unfolded a vivid picture in her mind: a workshop full of laughter, children learning skills that empowered their creativity, dreams being molded right before her eyes. Listening intently, Emily realized that Ryan's simple desires reflected a depth she hadn't anticipated. His blue-collar background didn't diminish him, instead, it textured his character with resilience and authentic passion, the very qualities she yearned to cherish in her own life. A question nagged at her, yet she dismissed it momentarily. Did she long for his boldness to confront societal judgments as she kept herself shackled to her fears? "Do you think you could ever run a workshop like that?" She probed cautiously, her voice steady despite the looming uncertainties. "Absolutely," he responded without hesitation. "It's just whether I put the pieces together and find the right space to make it happen." There was a glint of determination in his words. "I've been looking into community centers, but it's more about getting funding and logistics to line up. You know?" His words resonated like a truth bomb, awakening tension within her. The irony danced in her mind. Here was Ryan, a man who lacked formal credentials yet was mapping out a future for children. Meanwhile, she, a certified educator, was paralyzed by the mere thought of stepping outside of societal norms. As Ryan continued sharing his plans, Emily wrestled with the implications. Where did her aspirations fit within her family's expectations? It was a complex intertwining of identities, the dutiful daughter molded by tradition versus the passionate, independent woman yearning to embrace what felt right for her. Both versions of herself stood at odds, a collision of dreams and duty. The words spewing from Ryan's lips infused with sincerity and ambition made Emily acutely aware of her own silence, her own self-imposed limitations overshadowing the vibrant possibilities surrounding her. She caught her breath, piecing together her own courage slowly yet deliberately. "What if I helped you?" The words escaped before she could filter their significance. Was she ready to endorse Ryan's vision? Would it be a tentative step towards liberation or an impulsive reaction? The thought terrified her. What would her family say? He looked taken aback for a moment before a smile broke across his face, merging warmth with surprise. "That would be incredible, Emily." "What do you mean exactly?" And just like that, the fork in her journey beckoned fiercely. She could tag along to aid him or step back into the rigidity of her comfort zone. The answer was dangerously close, yet the air thickened with her uncertainty. It was a metamorphosis unfolding, tempting some unknown creativity within her to surface. What would it mean to intertwine her fate with someone deemed less than by her family? As the weight of the decision sank in, her thoughts collided noisily. The excitement was daunting yet exhilarated the air around them. Would she dare push the boundaries of her own world? The question now wasn't if she could help Ryan, it was whether she was prepared to confront her family's expectations as well. That line in the sand, once so unyielding, began to look like a doorway to freedom. Yet doubts lingered like shadows, whispering what-ifs, and as the diner's chatter enveloped them anew, Emily knew she had to make a choice soon. The moment of decision lingered, charged with promise and fear, tantalizingly close, just waiting to be seized. What lay ahead would demand courage she had yet to summon, but it loomed like a possibility she never thought she could touch. The next step was calling louder than the echoes of her past. Could she finally embrace the spirit of risk over reservation? This was but the prelude, a deeper exploration of herself awaited. Emily leaned back in her seat, a whirlpool of emotions coiling tight within her. The excitement she felt at proposing to help Ryan battled ferociously with the apprehension of what such a decision might entail. This opportunity, so vibrant and alive, was awakening something that lay dormant within her for far too long. What if she began, her voice barely above a whisper, but the thought evaporated as quickly as it formed. Instead of dwelling on the fear of her family's disapproval, she focused on Ryan's expression. His smile glowed with genuine warmth, and at that moment, she found a flicker of determination pushing through the cracks of her uncertainty. "Let's brainstorm," she suggested, adjusting the angles of her fingers on the table as if to ground herself amid the tempest of thoughts. "What do you need the most right now to get started?" Ryan's eyes softened, radiating gratitude. Well, I've got the concept, but I need a solid plan to present to potential funders. It's not just about the workshop itself, it's about making them see the value in what we can give these kids. I want them to feel empowered, like I did. His sincere enthusiasm was infectious, and Emily felt the stirrings of her own passion rising to match his. We could create a curriculum, she suggested, surprising herself. One that emphasizes hands-on learning while incorporating art and creativity. I can help structure it, make it educational yet fun. The more they brainstormed together, the more Emily realized the importance of stepping into the unknown. Each idea exchanged fueled another, sparking a rhythm that flowed effortlessly between them. Ryan had a vision, but with her educational background, they could mold it into something robust. As they talked, a part of her grew exhilarated by this collaborative energy. This venture was more than just about woodworking. It was about empowerment, hers, Ryan's, and those children who would someday enter this workshop full of hope and dreams. What about logistics? She pressed, eager to transform inspiration into action. Providing materials, finding a location, setting up classes. If we're going to present this plan, we need to cover our bases. The light in Ryan's eyes dimmed for a brief moment, revealing a streak of skepticism. Logistics always seem daunting, don't they? Sometimes I wonder if it's just a pipe dream. His vulnerability struck a chord deep within her. She understood the burden of self-doubt, the nagging whispers of inadequacy that clouded ambition. Their worlds contrasted so dramatically, his grounded with everyday concerns, hers tangled in familial expectations. But in that moment, speaking with him, she no longer felt trapped. Look, every dream has its challenges, she countered gently, wishing to pierce through the gloom of apprehension settling on him. But I believe we can make this happen. We can break it down into manageable steps. As she laid out a vision for their path ahead, Emily felt a transformation unfolding within herself. She relied not on the approval of her parents but on her own convictions and desires. Each word ignited a self-assuredness that had previously eluded her, as if pivoting away from her sheltered upbringing had finally granted her wings. In their conversation, she began to uncover facets of her potential: project planning, creative collaboration, mentorship, all of which intertwined with her personal growth. Allowing Ryan into her dreams became less about him being a distraction and more about him catalyzing her journeys forward. Yet, a lurking question gnawed at her insides: would this newfound sense of self persist once she stepped back into her existing life, where her parents held sway? Was she willing to face their disapproval, armed with the boldness she was just beginning to understand? Emily glanced outside the diner window, the streetlights flickering as the evening deepened. She had embarked on a path toward her own enlightenment, but a dark cloud of family expectations loomed ahead, waiting to challenge what could be her most authentic self yet. What if they never accept this? She pondered, but the thought only momentarily halted her thoughts. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, Ryan said, breaking through her reverie with determination. It's time to focus on what we can change now. The resonance of his words grounded her. She could feel fear and hope swirling within her like the flickering lights outside. However, she knew immediate choices loomed, decisions that would entail confronting not only the outside world but also the trepidation within herself. Just as she was ready to voice her commitment for the adventure, a sudden realization took hold of her heart: this journey wasn't only about supporting another, it was about redefining her own identity. With the weight of this understanding, Emily nodded slowly and took a deep breath, ready to unfurl her voice. Could she step beyond the threshold and truly embrace the essence of who she was meant to be? The air crackled with anticipation, the moment ripe for change. But standing at the precipice of newfound freedom, she also understood the looming shadows of family expectations wouldn't fade simply by voicing her desires. The real confrontation, the testing of her resolve, was yet to come. Emily pulled herself from the depths of uncertainty as the evening air thickened with the promise of change. Each heartbeat resonated with the weight of her decision, framing the pivotal moment that lay ahead. The conversation with Ryan had lit a fire within her, yet the shadows of expectation still haunted the edges of her thoughts. "I'm going to do this," she asserted, projecting confidence she didn't wholly feel. "Let us start with a detailed proposal tomorrow." The words tasted bittersweet, placing her squarely on the path of paradox. She was excited to move forward yet terrified of the repercussions. Ryan's face lit up, but Emily couldn't ignore the tightening knot in her stomach. The thrill of engagement flickered against the overwhelming dread of what awaited her family's judgment. A small part of her wondered if this was a reckless decision, driven by the exhilaration of newfound ambition. But as Ryan discussed funding strategies and potential partnerships, Emily found herself captivated by the challenge. Determination surged as she imagined role-playing potential discussions with funders, speaking passionately about their vision. She grasped the realization that she wasn't merely stepping into this collaborative space, she was also forging a new identity, one that contrasted starkly with the expectations her family had stitched into her fabric of life. Throughout the night, ideas flowed like ink from a fountain. They mapped out possible workshops, created character sketches for each session meant to entice funding, and envisioned how their project could flourish within the community. Her instincts guided her, urging her to rely on her own voice and intellect, free from familial shadows. Yet, the thought struck her again: how would she reconcile this new persona with the expectations imposed upon her? What if they saw her pursuits not as worthy endeavors, but as frivolous distractions? The idea of disappointing her parents held sharp potency, like a dagger poised at her chest. The next morning, Emily arrived at her new workspace, Ryan's modest workshop tucked behind an old storefront. The air buzzed with the scent of fresh-cut wood and the promise of creativity. She fell into a rhythm, the tactile pursuits awakening a sense of purpose within her. Each project they undertook, developing lesson plans, coordinating with local schools, built her confidence like rings of a tree, marking evidence of resilience and growth. However, even as she immersed herself in the work, moments of hesitation flicked through her mind. Watching Ryan as he passionately explained their curriculum to a group of interested parents, a pulse of realization flooded her senses. His authenticity drew admiration while her heart quickened at the thought of unveiling her intentions to her family. Could he continue to inspire her if she faltered in their approval? "Let us hold a community meeting this weekend," Ryan suggested one afternoon, cutting through her reverie. "Get input from everyone and let us show them how impactful this can be." The idea set her heart racing. Community input could fortify their plans, but it also meant facing additional scrutiny. What if they don't understand? She questioned, grappling with the seeds of doubt. "Then we educate them," he replied resolutely. "You're becoming a voice in this, Emily. Let it shine." His encouragement resonated, but it also amplified her inner conflict. The journey was pushing her outward, but would it also force her inward? The fear of familial backlash loomed larger than ever as she stepped deeper into the unknown with Ryan. Emily could feel the edges of her self-worth sharpening, but with each step toward clarity, the voices of her past grew louder. "You may fail, you may disappoint. Never mind that," she said to herself defiantly. "I'm carving my own path." Yet as they prepared for the community meeting, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge awaited in the form of her family's response. The tension coiled tightly in her chest, a prelude to confrontation. She couldn't ignore the ticking clock as their initial confrontation loomed. With her resolve hardening, Emily prepared to face the ultimate test of her newfound identity. Would she stand firm in her choices or buckle under the weight of expectation? As the weekend approached, uncertainties flickered like candles in the dark, and Emily realized she was not only fighting for a project, she was reclaiming her autonomy. Yet behind the horizon, a storm brewed, waiting to unveil the truth of her ambition. The moment of reckoning echoed ominously in the corners of her mind, and she could not ignore the nagging doubt. Prepare, but at what cost? Emily stood at the threshold of the workshop, the air thick with anticipation and trepidation. The meeting was only hours away, a few sheets of paper crammed with scribbled notes tucked under her arm like armor against uncertainty. Her heart pounded, echoing the clash of her conflicting desires, the thrill of her progress ignited against the fear of inadequacy simmering beneath the surface. The sun spilled through the windows, illuminating her workspace and casting elongated shadows along the wooden benches. Each corner of the room held remnants of their ideas, yet all she felt was a sudden heaviness, a crushing weight of her own expectations. What if she stumbled upon her words, revealing her insecurities in front of those eager faces? Ryan's laughter rang out from a corner, jangling her nerves like wind chimes in a storm. He was speaking animatedly to a few volunteers, his passion palpable, weaving together ideas that excited the attendees. Emily admired how he fit so seamlessly into this world, exuding an energy that both captivated and intimidated her. As she observed him, a familiar voice buzzed in her mind, "You will never measure up." With a determined breath, she walked over to the table where Ryan was writing out discussion points. "How do you manage this so effortlessly?" she blurted, the question slipping from her lips before she could filter her vulnerability. Ryan paused, glancing up with a thoughtful expression. "It's about believing in what you're doing," he replied, his sincerity cutting through her anxiety. "We're doing something meaningful here, something that matters. You can stand behind that truth." But the truth felt elusive as she stood amidst stacks of papers that contained intricate plans and philosophies all shaped by her hands but formed under the shadow of doubt. "What if they take one look and dismiss it all as childish?" she asked, dread creeping under her skin. "Then we show them why it counts," he reassured her. "They may not see it right away, but you're creating a dialogue. That's where change starts." The words ignited something within her. She realized that the purpose of the meeting transcended mere project plans. It served as an opening, a chance to claim her voice amid the cacophony of expectations that sought to drown it out. The fear was still there, simmering, yet now she felt a flicker of defiance against it. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting's start, a bustling crowd began to fill the workshop. Parents, friends, and neighbors walked in, creating a buzz of energy that both thrilled and unnerved her. Emily stood at the front, her hands gripping the podium, the stuttering pulse of her heart echoing resilience. The fear acted not as a shackle but as fuel. When Ryan introduced her, she felt a surge of panic, the room fading into silence as all eyes fixed on her. But with a deep breath, she anchored herself in her intent, recalling Ryan's words. She began to speak, the warmth of authenticity flooding her voice. She shared not only their vision but also her personal journey, the fear of judgment, the thrill of breaking free from constraining expectations, and the empowerment she found in pursuing something she believed in. It wasn't merely a presentation, it was an unveiling of her truth. The feedback from the audience was mixed. Encouraging murmurs clashed with skeptical frowns. Yet, the realization struck her, their approval was not the most significant barrier she faced. In that moment, Emily understood she was engaging in a more profound battle, the one against her fears, her ingrained insecurities. This was about proving to herself that she could stand firm in her identity and aspirations. After the meeting wrapped, she felt both exhilarated and exhausted, like a seed freshly sprouted from its shell. Conversations buzzed like bees, and the dynamic shifted. Emily noticed a few parents approaching, eyes filled with intrigue rather than disdain. For the first time, she felt hope bloom amidst the uncertainty. The confidence she tapped into during her speech would now echo through her home life. She was not just Emily, daughter, or the version they expected. She was a force creating her story, vibrant and raw. As she gathered her things, Ryan's presence beside her felt reassuring. "You did well," he said, the pride evident in his voice. "Yeah, but this is just the beginning, right?" She mused, recalling the churning emotions from earlier. Ryan nodded with a spirited grin. "Exactly. And now we face the real challenge: how do you share this part of you with your family?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications, and Emily felt the stirrings of doubt once more. Would they understand her journey, or would they reject the very essence of who she had begun to embrace? The question coiled tightly in her gut, a prelude to an inevitable confrontation that would test her resolve and clarity moving forward. Her heart raced again, but now it thrummed with empowered purpose as she prepared to step into the next daunting chapter of her life. Emily stepped out of the workshop into the cool evening air, her heart still fiercely beating from the adrenaline, but cloaked in a new sense of purpose. The sun began to dip beyond the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, mirroring the chaotic blend of emotions that swirled within her. The weight of Ryan's question lingered, amplifying her apprehension. She walked towards her car, fighting against the thoughts that crept back into her mind, whispering uncertainties. How was she to explain this transformation, this burgeoning self to her family? The very people she had tried to please her entire life, often at the expense of her own identity. When she reached home, the familiar sounds of laughter mingled with the clinking of dishes greeted her. For a fleeting moment, she considered retreating to her room, seeking sanctuary in her solitude, but she quelled the impulse. Tonight needed to be different. As she entered the living room, her parents looked up, their smiles welcoming yet tinged with the kind of scrutiny that made her squirm. "How was your meeting?" her mother asked, setting down her knitting with a hint of curiosity. "It went well," Emily started, not quite trusting her own voice. "Just well?" her father prompted, leaning forward, genuine interest etching his features. It sparked a flicker of hope within her. This was her chance. Taking a calming breath, she recounted her experience, emphasizing not just the initiative but the journey, the layers of doubt, the thrill of claiming her voice for the first time. Each word she spoke felt like carving her identity into stone. The room remained quiet, but she could feel their attention anchor to her developing narrative. Although she stumbled over her fears, the tremor in her voice began to translate into strength. Her mother's brow softened while her father's expression shifted from one of critique to contemplation. A glimmer of understanding finally chased away the scrutiny she felt. "I never knew you felt like that," her mother finally said, her voice gentle. "Why didn't you tell us?" Emily hesitated, the very question she had grappled with surfacing again. Why hadn't she shared before? Was it fear of disappointment, or had it been a subconscious decision to shield herself from their judgments? "Because I wasn't sure what it meant for me," she confessed, the vulnerability raw but liberating. "But now, I want to grow. I want to figure out who I am aside from just being your daughter." There was silence again, heavier this time, suffused with unspoken words. As her family digested her revelation, Emily was struck by a new realization: this was not just a one-way street. They held a mirror to her journey and, under the faint light of understanding, they too had the potential to embrace change. "You have every right to pursue your dreams, Emily," her father finally stated, resolve apparent in his voice. "And we're proud of you." The warmth in his words enveloped her, offering both reassurance and a challenge. The conversation hadn't solved everything, but it had shifted the landscape of her fears. They were beginning to understand that her growth might serve to inspire them, just as their support could fuel her aspirations. As the evening stretched on, ideas flowed. They exchanged viewpoints, discussing creativity, dreams, and possibilities of collaboration that they had never explored. Emily felt boundaries dissolve, her fears dissipating into a sense of camaraderie. With renewed vigor, she recognized that this process of sharing her truth didn't only belong to her, it prompted a familial evolution, propelling her parents to explore their own hidden aspirations. But just as a sense of harmony began to settle, the thought of the vulnerability she had laid bare gnawed at her. Would they remain supportive in the face of her ongoing transformation? Would they truly embrace her, despite the changes she sought to bring into their lives? There was still so much left unsaid, a long road ahead where all truths would be tested. Emily sat back, contemplating her path and the conversation set to unfurl in the coming days. The task of facing herself and her family's expectations loomed large, leaving her with one pulsing question: how would her newfound voice resonate with those who had always seen her in a singular light? The time had come to confront not just their perceptions but to redefine their roles in each other's lives. The deeper exploration of her identity was underway, but would it deepen connection, or fracture it further? The morning light streamed into Emily's room, coaxing her from dreams that felt more vibrant than her waking hours. She stretched her limbs, recalling the previous night's conversations that lingered like the warmth of her father's words. But beneath the surface, doubt clawed at her. The clarity they had reached felt fragile, susceptible to the currents of old habits and expectations. As she dressed, the weight of her transformation settled into the fabric of her clothing. Each piece felt symbolic, a shield against the predictable personas her family had always known. Today, she resolved to venture further into her new self, not just through conversation, but by taking tangible steps toward her burgeoning ambitions. At work, Emily's desk seemed like an island of familiarity, but today, it also felt confining. She had pitched her design ideas in casual meetings before, but now, defiantly, she decided to schedule a formal presentation. It was a chance to not only lay out her concepts but to reclaim her narrative in front of her colleagues. The preparation consumed her thoughts, and with every moment spent at her drafting table, confidence mingled with nerves. She meticulously crafted her slides, identifying her strengths while grappling with fears of judgment. Each idea that flowed onto the screen became a declaration. She was stepping into a role that had long awaited her. But as the hours passed in the office, echoes of self-doubt reverberated louder. What if her colleagues dismissed her ideas? What if her manager questioned her authority? Such questions marinated her ambition in insecurity. Somewhere deep within, she recognized this struggle, an internal battle that had stifled her for years. Taking a break, Emily wandered to the rooftop terrace where the sun glimmered. She leaned against the railing, closing her eyes to soak in the warmth. The sounds of the city buzzed below, a bustling reminder of life in motion. For a moment it was as if the world outside was cheering her on, urging her to break free. Innovation is born from discomfort, she whispered to herself, channeling Ryan's earlier words. It was time to embrace that discomfort, challenge it head-on instead of avoiding it. Yet even as she resolved to fight against her doubts, a nagging thought emerged. What if confronting these feelings exposed weaknesses that had long remained hidden? That evening, buoyed by her determination, she approached her manager. "I'd like to schedule a presentation," she started, her voice steadier than she felt. The acknowledgement of her intention sparked enthusiasm from her manager, an enthusiastic nod affirming Emily's decision. "Absolutely. I would love to see what you've been working on," he replied, the encouragement punctuating Emily's resolve. As she left the office, adrenaline coursed through her. It wasn't just about the presentation, it was about carving out a space for herself where she hadn't existed before. The gravity of her actions, seeking not only approval but respect, began to solidify into a palpable sense of power. But with each step toward her newfound path, the specter of family expectations loomed large again. Would they view her aspirations as frivolous? Would they respect her choices, or question her motives? Home felt different that night. The laughter and warmth held a tint of unfamiliarity, her parents offering a comforting environment that now felt juxtaposed against her evolving identity. "Emily," her mother said, an edge of curiosity in her voice as dinner rolled on. "You seem different today." "I'm trying to be," Emily replied, the weight grounded in every syllable. The honesty of her statement clawed at the walls of her past, and she found herself unearthing another layer of vulnerability. "I'm pushing for more at work. I want to present my designs." Her parents exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and apprehension. The silence spilled into the room like a sudden gust of wind, unsettling yet invigorating. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" her father finally asked, his concern palpable. His question, though rooted in care, struck a nerve. It was the familiar doubt that had restrained her for years, and at that moment, as she processed his words, Emily realized something pivotal. This was not merely about proving her worth to her family or her colleagues, it was about answering to herself. The sun slipped away that evening, shadows creeping in as new tensions rose. Emily sat at the table, smoldering within the uncertainty, wondering about the reactions to come. The path ahead widened into the unknown. Would she be able to stand firm against the undertow of ingrained perceptions? The drive to reclaim her narrative surged within her even as she questioned everything that lay before her. Feeling a swell of determination, Emily pondered the upcoming presentation while wrestling with the realization that not merely her family, but she herself would have to confront her own fears about how they might view her ambitions. The stage was set, her journey toward self-discovery awaited, yet she couldn't help but wonder, would her breakthrough design be the catalyst for her to finally find acceptance, or merely a stepping stone toward a greater clash of identities? In the days leading up to her presentation, Emily threw herself into her work with an intensity that surprised even her. The once daunting task of articulating her vision now felt urgent, an opportunity to seize her potential and silence the whispers of doubt that lingered in her mind. Each evening, she found herself immersed in a sea of sketches and notes, shaping her ideas, fueled by both excitement and apprehension. Yet, as the countdown to her scheduled presentation neared, the whispers morphed into dissonant echoes. What if they laugh? What if they see only flaws? These questions gnawed at her resolve, peeling back layers of courage she had fought so hard to construct. On the night before she would unveil her work, Emily stood before the mirror, rehearsing her opening lines. The reflection staring back at her was uncertain, yet she sensed a flicker of determination beneath the surface. "This is your time, Emily," she muttered to herself. Each echo of her voice bounced off the walls, reminding her of the power of her dreams. After several iterations of her speech, she felt something shift within. An idea emerged, one that anchored her confidence. She would weave her personal journey into her presentation, revealing not just her designs but the passion and resilience that had shaped them. This was no longer simply about presenting ideas, it was about presenting herself. Morning arrived with a rush of adrenaline. As she dressed, she chose a blouse that felt daringly bold, its vibrant color mirroring her intent. The fabric tangled with newfound determination, it was an armor against the shadow of her self-doubts. When she walked into the office, every step felt purposeful, a silent declaration that she was ready to emerge from the cocoon of her safe existence. With her heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock, Emily entered the conference room, greeted by a group of familiar but intimidating faces. This was at the moment of truth. As she took her place in front of the screen, she caught her manager's encouraging nod, and for the first time, she felt a rush of warmth that edged out her fear. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. She reminded herself that she was not merely a designer but a storyteller revealing the tapestry of her aspirations through her work. She launched into her presentation, intertwining her designs with anecdotes of her journey, digging deeper into the emotions that fueled her creativity. The initial nervousness morphed into exhilaration. She watched her colleagues lean in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. As her confidence grew, Emily threaded in her vulnerabilities, sharing the fears that had gripped her for so long. Yet, just as she reached the crescendo of her narrative, a voice from the back of the room interrupted, shattering the spell. "But Emily, do you really think this is viable? Aren't these just fanciful dreams?" The question struck like a bolt, propelling doubts back into the forefront of her mind. Instantly, she felt the familiar pang of vulnerability and judgment return. Her response hung in the air for a moment, thick with tension. As her mind raced, she fought against the instinct to retreat, to allow the weight of skepticism to drown her newfound voice. Instead, something within her ignited a defiance birthed from her determination to claim her narrative. "I believe that every great design starts as a dream," she replied, her voice firm. "And to dismiss those dreams is to stifle innovation. I'm not sharing this with you because I seek validation, I'm sharing it because I want to inspire conversation. I want our team to reimagine what is possible." Emily felt the energy shift, her colleagues exchanged glances, their skepticism cracking under the light of her resolve. Encouraged, she continued, presenting not just her designs but her willingness to be vulnerable, which, in itself, became a tangible part of the work. As she finished, uncertainty still lurked at the edges, but as applause erupted, Emily felt a surge of Unfamiliar pride. She had not just presented her work, she had walked through the door to a new chapter of her life. But as she left the conference room, that nagging thought crept back: would their acceptance catalyze a shift in how her family viewed her aspirations? This was just the beginning, and the real challenge lay ahead. Emily realized she had more than designs to clarify, she had a dialogue to pursue with those she loved. The weight of their expectations was far from diminished, it now loomed larger than ever, a stark reminder of the travail that awaited her at home. As she stepped into the hallway, a heady mix of hope and trepidation washed over her. It was time for yet another confrontation. How could she navigate their expectations without compromising the authenticity she had just begun to embrace? The answer seemed as elusive as her path so far. Emily stepped into the familiar weight of the office hallway, each stride tethered to the uncertainty swirling in her mind. The echoes of her presentation still reverberated, yet the applause felt fragile, a temporary shield against a looming reality. How would she convey this newfound confidence to her family, who had always seen her as the girl chasing whimsical dreams rather than a woman carving a legacy? As she approached her desk, a pile of emails awaited, each a reminder of the business demands she could no longer ignore. They held the mundane and the critical, an array of deadlines and requests that beckoned her to return to the routine she was desperate to evolve from. Would she be able to balance the chase of her aspirations with the responsibilities and expectations her family placed upon her? She sunk into her chair, the same desk that had borne witness to her hesitations. A hollow ache settled in her gut as she scrolled through her emails. Each task felt heavier than the last, pulling her back into an identity that no longer aligned with who she aspired to be. Emily found herself staring at the screen, trapped between the weight of her corporate duties and the soaring ambitions she had only just begun to articulate. With a sigh, she absent-mindedly opened a blank document, aligning her thoughts. Words danced in her mind, fragments of her presentation swirling: innovation, dreams, journey. They intermingled with an underlying question: was innovation the only thing that mattered, or was there more to her ambition? Perhaps the ache stemmed from the internal battle. She felt a pressing need not only to succeed but to stay true to her evolving self. Then, an idea struck her with startling clarity. Maybe it was time to confront her fears directly, to map out a plan that would simultaneously honor her personal growth while respecting the familial bonds that tethered her. She would craft not just a vision for her career but a strategy that incorporated honest conversations with her family. Drawing from the lessons of her presentation, she began to outline talking points for her impending family discussions. Letter in her mind, she pictured herself speaking to her family, sharing her recent experience and the transformative power of vulnerability. "I want to create things that matter, not just for myself but for us as a family," she imagined saying. With renewed energy, her fingers danced across the keyboard. She articulated her aspirations, balancing ambition with an acknowledgement of her family's perspective. This shape of a letter took form, a bridge between her dreams and their expectations, a commitment to invest in both her passions and her relationships. The idea of inviting them into her journey, rather than defending against them, reshaped her resolve. As the clock ticked, reality set back in. What if their reaction was dismissive? Would they see her aspirations as frivolous again? Or would they grasp the meaning behind her words? These doubts hovered ominously like clouds ready to burst. Closing her laptop, Emily exhaled deeply. It was a risk, but one worth taking. Embracing vulnerability in her professional life had ignited something within her. It was time to extend that courage into her personal relationships. The evening was a blur of family dynamics as they gathered for dinner. Faces illuminated by the warm glow of the dining room light mirrored her anticipation. As she sat down, layers of uncertainty still clung to her. Would they listen? Could she find the words to share this piece of her soul? Taking a deep breath, she resolved to lead with authenticity, hoping that with every word, she would carve a space for her dreams in the heart of her family. The moment had come to confront the truth, not just about her aspirations but about who she was becoming. Caught in the moment, Emily felt a familiar tremor in her gut, both fear and excitement melding into a singular force. She raised her glass, heart racing as she prepared to speak. Until now, she had been a designer of visions. It was time to design her own personal narrative. Would her family embrace the new chapter she was attempting to unfold, or would they see her as still living within the confines of her past? As she opened her mouth, the future hung delicately in the balance. The ultimate test of the growth she had just begun to grasp was about to commence. Emily sat at the family dining table, her hands wrapped around a glass of water that felt unusually heavy. With her parents eagerly awaiting her words, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the chandelier, the moment felt monumental. The bubbling excitement of her recent successes clashed with the anxiety of revealing her true self to those who had shaped her perceptions for so long. Drawing on her courage, Emily began, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want, and who I want to be." Her voice, though tentative at first, steadied as she saw the glimmer of curiosity in her mother's eyes and the unwavering attention from her father. "I presented my designs at work," she continued, feeling the words flow more freely now, "and I shared not just the ideas but a part of my personal journey. It was terrifying but also freeing. I realized that I've spent so much time trying to fit into a mold that doesn't fit me." The shock on their faces was palpable, yet she pressed on, eager to bridge the chasm that had separated her aspirations from their expectations. "I want to create things that matter, not just to me, but to our family and community. I want to redefine success, to pursue my dreams without fear of judgment." For once, the usual family routine faded into the background, allowing space for her candid conversation. She unfolded her vision for the woodworking program with Ryan, describing the joy she had felt when working on something authentically hers. As she elaborated on the plans they had drawn together, she witnessed a subtle transformation on her parents' faces, shifting from skepticism to intrigue. "I want you to know that pursuing my passion doesn't mean I'm stepping away from you or my responsibilities. It means I'm growing into who I'm meant to be." The tears pooled in her mother's eyes, which felt both daunting and reassuring. Emily had always feared her ambitions would push her family away, yet here she was, hoping to pull them closer into her world. Her father finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Emily, we never intended to restrict you. We just wanted to see you succeed in a world that values education and stability. But seeing your passion, your commitment to something meaningful that's more important than any degree." The heaviness that had weighed on her heart began to lift, replaced by a warmth that surged through her. For the first time in years, she felt a simultaneous release from the expectations that had chafed against her spirit and an acceptance from her family that validated her choices. It was profound, the unfolding of their understanding as they entered a dialogue rather than maintaining a monologue about what she should be. "I see now that growth is an evolution," her mother added, a smile breaking through the tears. "We can all expect to change and be different. You inspire us." Small moments of laughter punctuated their hesitations as Emily shared specifics about how she envisioned the woodworking program, how it would empower children and instill creativity. Her parents engaged with questions, their inquiries reflecting genuine interest rather than resistance. They were processing her dreams as something to be celebrated, not dismissed. The conversations delved deeper into not just her projects but the fabric of who she was becoming. By the end of the night, they reached an unspoken agreement: they would support her journey, as uncertain as it might be. Emily had not only achieved a critical step in her personal growth, she had enacted a transformative, reciprocal engagement within her family, in understanding that the ties of love extended to embrace passions, vulnerabilities, and dreams. As she retired to her room that night, the familiar weight no longer felt like a burden but a badge of honor. She had not just confronted her family's expectations, she had fundamentally altered the dynamics of their relationships. Her growth radiated through the newfound openness they shared. Many dreams lay ahead of her, intertwined with moments that required courage and authenticity. With a heart brimming with purpose, Emily resolved to continue advocating for herself and weaving her journey into existence, a journey of empowerment, not just for her but for those around her as well. The echo of the evening replayed in her mind a symphony of acceptance and understanding. She had conquered more than just her doubts, she had dismantled old narratives and carved a space where her evolution could flourish. True personal fulfillment was not merely about chasing dreams, it was about grounding the journey in connection and shared growth and accomplishment that would forever define her narrative. Emily smiled to herself, knowing this was only the beginning. Now, it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about endings like Emily's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and ensure you stay connected for more inspiring content. Don't wait even one more second.